Good evening. I'd like to call this meeting of the Clay County Commission to order. Doing our invocation tonight is Jerry Kane. Please come forward. And I think you know the drill, but I won't repeat it anyway for those who will come to speak after you. And that is, when you come up to address the commission, please make sure that the green light is on as is being demonstrated. Say your name into the microphone and then proceed with your comments. With that, Jerry, you are recognized.
I'm Jerry Kane, and I invite us to a moment of prayer. For Clay County workers, tonight we do pray. For these faithful good folks who show up every day, these back corner people make Clay County thrive. So for 2 more hours, help them look alive. Though the potholes need action and roads need some paving, they do faithful work and are not misbehaving. They hear us complain and they seldom get praise, yet they provide us good service in remarkable ways. I'm sure we need maps and auditors too. Watch over their efforts for whatever they do. Our roads and our bridges and historic sites are in good people's hands, for we know it's all right. Watch over our clerk and recorder of deeds. They care for your people to meet all our needs. Our collector, assessor, and tourism too serve demanding locals as if they serve you. We need planning and zoning and a good lawyer too to make us play nice when it's red versus blue. Clay County's the greatest. It's frosting on cake. Human resources, our parks and our lake. Please watch over our sheriff as he watches over us. We pray peace on earth with no fights and no fuss. The purchasing people and also Ms. Wright, they stay at their posts and they fight the good fight. We pray for our commission, Jerry, Megan, Joanne, Jay, Scott, Jason, John, as they work out your plan. We're growing tired, God, of every promise and ad. It is now time to vote, and for that we are glad. Give us patience to work with whoever wins, for you said you still love us in spite of our sins. We pray this in the name of the creating and sustaining God. Amen.
Thank you. Please join me in the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Please call the roll.
Commissioner Nolte. Here. Commissioner Withington.
Here.
Commissioner Lawson. Here. Commissioner Wagner. Here. Commissioner Johnson.
Here.
Commissioner Thompson.
Here.
Commissioner Carpenter.
Here. There we go. With that, is there a motion related to this evening's agenda? There we go. You're recognized.
Move to approve tonight's agenda with the exception of ceremonial matters, which I think is going to be removed for tonight.
If I could just briefly explain, that is the recognition of our Citizen Academy graduates. Last night was their last meeting, and in talking to many of them, a lot of them had conflicts this evening and couldn't be here. And we certainly want to recognize all of them for participating, so they've asked we're going to move the recognition to next week.
Very well. Motion has been made to the approval of this evening's agenda with the exception of the Citizens Academy graduation item under ceremonial matters to be removed. Discussion? Seeing none, you are recognized to close.
I close.
Please call the roll.
Commissioner Johnson.
Yes.
Commissioner Withington. Yes. Commissioner Lawson.
Yes.
Commissioner Wagner.
Aye.
Commissioner Thompson.
Yes.
Commissioner Carpenter.
Yes.
Motion passes 6-0.
Agenda has been approved. We have, as a result, we do not have anything under ceremonial matters. That brings us to public comments. Are there any members of the public wishing to come forward and make any comments? If you want to make a comment on something that's on the agenda, you can go either way, but certainly we want to make sure that anyone who is a member of the public has the opportunity to address the commission on any issues that are important to them. If you'd like to come forward, and as I said before, make sure that the green light is on the microphone, state your name, and then address your comments to the commission.
Okay.
Please
My name's
proceed.
Kent Hastings. This is my wife Karen, and I'm talking roads, just what you want to hear. But I've talked to several people. I've done the computer thing, so here I am on this time. I'm about as far south in the county as you can get before you get to Kansas City. And I talked to Mr. Degenhart a couple times, which,
Could you speak just a little bit more in the mic? I'm having a little bit of trouble hearing you.
well, I was an old PE teacher. I can yell real good. but okay.
Thank you.
And I talked to Mr. Degenhart, and he's doing pretty good for the first week on the job. He's called me twice. But anyway, I told him I was going to come tonight. But first of all, I want to ask you if you know what I'm talking about when I say 132nd Street and between Mount Olivet and Virginia, Mount Olivet Church. That's the area I'm talking about. And, you know, the people I've talked to, I live on Coble Lane, and it's a dead end, and going to Coble Lane is 132nd Street. And if you're familiar with that area, you know it. If you're not, you need to drive it. They've been out there several times, and the road's falling apart, and I'm just letting you guys know that. And I've looked at the schedule and all that stuff, when Coble Lane's supposed to be done, when 132nd Street's supposed to be done. And well, all I'm saying is there's roads, dead-end roads that have been paved, one this year, one last year, that have less traffic than what we have on there. And I was just wanting you guys to, you know, be aware of it. And, you know, if we can get, you know, instead of chip and seal, the asphalt, I realize it's more expensive, but even if, you know, if we're scheduled for 2028, which I think is what it is, you know, that'd be nice just to wait till 2028 and just get asphalt, if this can be changed. You know, that's why I'm here. And 132nd Street is supposed to be that micro stuff next year, and it needs a whole new, you know, the sides are falling apart in the center, and they have fixed it so much, you can't go more than 25 miles an hour. If you're coming down a hill, your car goes sideways on it. So, you know, it's a hazard. And I try to go down there and, you know, clean everything so people can see. But, and I've talked to the highway guys, you know, and they go, well, you know, we only have so many people, which I get, you know. But the thing that they got that thing with the truck with the arm on it, the new thing, which, you know, one guy isn't going to do it. And then in the summer, when they pour that oil, you know, the arm comes out, they spray it. The arm comes out, they put gravel on it. And then when it's hot, the oil just oozes down the road if it's on a hill. It doesn't fill it up, you know. But that's why I'm here, to let you guys be aware of that. And I'm not saying, you know, we need immediate action. I just, you know, the asphalt's the best thing. You guys know it, and I know it. And I know it's more expensive, but if we can just, you know, I think we're due up in 2028 at Coble Lane. And, you know, if we can just get to asphalt like it is on Sunburst, that was the road off of Mount Olivet that I was talking about. Is that my bell? Do I have a time limit?
No, that was, I don't know what that was, but no, please proceed.
Okay.
Well, I mean, there's a time limit, certainly, when the rooster crows, and certainly.
Well, yeah, okay. I think I'm done. Yeah, I think she wanted something to say.
He mentioned Sunburst.
Go ahead and identify yourself for the audio.
I'm Karen Hastings.
Thank you.
We live in the same house. And didn't want to overlap anything he had said, but I wanted to mention some things specifically on Coble Lane. They did the road, they did the chip and seal probably 6, maybe 7 years ago. And we were one of 2 roads that, I don't know if they got a deal on for the rock. It was like river rock. It was brown looking. And they smoothed it and did all that. That road didn't last a year. And so they were out the following year, and they had to, you know how they cap it so the water drains on the sides, and they end up adding some things, and that was the following year. So the past 5 years, it's just been falling apart. They just patch it. And so this past summer, they put pavement on Sunburst. Sunburst has 11 homes. We have 8. I don't know what your criteria would be why an 11-house road would get paving, and we are scheduled for chip and seal. And I guarantee you, I highly suspect we have more traffic on our road. Of the 8 houses, there's 3 people that run a business. 2 of them work for the cat, I'll say the cat commission, they adopt cats. You know, so they have cat people delivering people. Well, literally every single day we get an Amazon, a UPS, and a FedEx truck. Sometimes multiple times a day. They're delivering cat food and kitty litter. They have so much, they're bringing the litter in. Well, they have so much litter going out, they use 2 different trash companies. So we have 2 different trash trucks going up and down the street. One guy's a contractor, so he has a lot of people that work with him. So we have the 8 homes, but one of the homes has made like a small apartment above their garage. So there's another tenant living there. So in a way, it's like 9 different families on that road. So 9 families versus 11, and we're not scheduled till 2028 for chip and seal. And if we have to wait, I would ask that you reevaluate what you're going to put down. And then last but not least, the micro seal. They've talked about doing that, and we have a friend who works on highways and all that. I know you have someone who's new, and I probably is very familiar with what the process is, but it's our understanding it's just a small or a thin layer, and if you don't have a good base, you're wasting your money. So I'm hoping your new person is aware of the base before we throw good money after bad. If it works, great, but you have to have a decent base. And the road that he specifically talked about on 132nd is one solid patch after the next. It's not even, there's no pavement there. And we used to have a lot of bicyclers. They can't go down that road anymore because you take your life in your own hands at any speed. So anyway, just don't know who's responsible for their criteria or how set in stone anything is, but I'm sure there's wiggle room if you feel like there's a just cause. And I do appreciate your time, and we're not here to complain. I'm just asking you to look, and we very seldom miss an election. So we're not people that don't participate in government. We do, and feel like it's beneficial to provide insight for you guys to make better decisions. So thank you very much.
Thank you. And please provide any information that you would like to forward to the commission to the administrators. That way we make sure we have it in a nice centralized area. So anything that you'd like to forward, please go through the administrator for that.
Okay.
Thank you.
Which one's Mr. Degenhardt? Okay, how you doing? I talked to you earlier today.
No problem. Are there any other citizens wishing to comment this evening before we move on? Seeing none, that brings us to our consent agenda. Our consent agenda, so Administrator, if you would please.
The consent agenda allows the Commission to act upon items considered to be routine and approved in one motion. These may include items that have been reviewed by the Commission in a prior session. There will be no separate discussion unless a Commissioner requests that an item be removed from the consent agenda and considered separately. There are 4 items on the consent agenda this evening. The first item is approval of the Commission meeting minutes from October 3rd and October 10th. Resolution 2024-292 is approving invoice payments for Clay County from October 5th to October 11th. There are 326 invoices totaling $334,056.22. Resolution 2024-298 is approving Form 4379 and Form 4379A to the Missouri Department of Revenue, and 2024 Ordinance 33, approving the updated annual fee schedule for long-term planning for 2025 through 2029.
Thank you. Is there a motion on the consent agenda? Commissioner Johnson.
Move to approve tonight's consent agenda.
Motion has been made for the approval of this evening's consent agenda. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, you are recognized to close.
I close.
Please call the roll.
Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Commissioner Withington? Yes. Commissioner Lawson?
Yes.
Commissioner Wagner?
Aye.
Commissioner Thompson?
Yes.
Commissioner Carpenter?
Yes.
Motion passes 6-0.
Thank you. That brings us to our regular agenda. First item on this evening's regular agenda is 2024-293. Administrator.
Resolution 2024-293 is approving invoice payments for Clay County Prosecutor's Office from October 5th through October 11th in the amount of $1,510.43, and there are 8 invoices.
Commissioner Johnson.
Move to approve 2024-293.
Motion has been made for the approval of 2024-293. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, you are recognized to close.
Close.
Please call the roll.
Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Commissioner Withington? Yes. Commissioner Lawson?
Yes.
Commissioner Wagner?
Aye.
Commissioner Thompson?
I recuse myself.
Commissioner Carpenter?
Yes.
Motion passes 5 in favor, 1 recusal.
Next item on the agenda, final item on the regular agenda this evening is 2024-294. Administrator.
Resolution 2024-294 is a consideration of the matter of review and recommendation of the Clay County Comprehensive Plan. As the Commission knows, this has been over a year project involving a lot of public engagement. And this evening, we have Director Jones here that will give an overview of the comprehensive plan and the process.
Please proceed, Mr. Jones.
Kip Jones, Planning Director. So I am excited to be in front of you tonight because this has been quite the process, and I'm happy to present the final draft of the Clay County Comprehensive Plan. So this, as I said, it's been a long process. As you know, the county partnered with Olson Studio as our consultant for this project. They have done a good job, the major lifting for the plan up to today, and I thought it was important that I bring the plan to the commission because it's going to be myself and or my staff that will stand before you and the Planning and Zoning Commission as we have projects and tell you whether we believe they do or don't meet the comprehensive plan. So we're going to talk about basically 3 different areas tonight. I'm going to give you a little bit of background information of kind of how we got to this point. I'm going to give you some plan highlights, and then we're going to talk about where we go from here. So I thought I would start with what is a comprehensive plan. A comprehensive plan examines what a community is, where it came from, and crafts a coordinated roadmap for the future. This roadmap guides the growth and development of the county for the next 20 years and is revisited often to ensure its relevance. So a couple things there. We want this to be a living document. It's a document that can be amended, changed, added to, deleted from. Maybe it'll be the perfect document that we don't have to change, but just know that we can go back and amend it with help from the County Commission and Planning and Zoning Commission. Secondarily, I want to make it clear that Olson looked at the entire county with this plan. So they did a market analysis, detailed studies of the whole Clay County. But I want to be clear that the land use portion of this plan only regulates the unincorporated or the areas that are outside city limits. So let's talk about that timeline a little bit. So there were basically 4 stages of this plan. We started last year with the discovery phase. That's when Olson looked at the county as a whole, also looked at all of our existing plans. Then we went into the engagement section. Now that, to me, was the most important part of the plan because that's when we started reaching out to the public. And I'm going to talk about that section in detail here in a minute, but just know it's important to know that this is not the Planning and Zoning Department's plan. This is not Olson Studios' plan. This plan was formed by all that input we received during that engagement process. Then the plan was created. There was a draft version and a final version. Public comments were taken with both those plan versions, and now we're in the refine and implement section. Obviously, the plan has been refined, and the goal all along has been to adopt the plan by the end of this year. So with any big project, we want to look at how does it correlate with the strategic plan from 2023. So one of the goals of the strategic plan in the economic opportunity focus area was to adopt the comprehensive plan. So if we adopt this, or when we adopt this, we will be achieving one of those goals in the strategic plan. In addition, the way this plan was constructed, there's 5 core elements that you can see in that chart, starting with land use all the way over to collaboration. Those 5 core elements were tailored after the 5 focus areas in the strategic plan that you can see on the left-hand side of that screen. So staff and Olson believe these plans work hand in hand and can interact with each other. So let's talk about how we got here. So what I'm trying to show here is we have the plan that was generated by all these voices coming in, all these comments from the outside areas. So the plan is based on public input, existing conditions, previous plans, common planning practices, and Clay County communities. There was multiple stakeholder groups, and I can't emphasize this enough. We reached out to multiple groups. That included the Planning and Zoning and County Commission, county departments. There was a citizen committee that was formed that attended several public meetings. There were focus groups. We had a total of 6 focus groups. Those were smaller groups that provided input for the plan. That included a farming focus group, a business owners who own businesses only in the unincorporated section. Olson went to Kearney High School to a geography class, and they provided input. We had a senior citizen group, and then we had 2 HOAs from the unincorporated section of Clay County that provided input. In addition, there was a standalone website that had a survey open for a couple months. We received over 700 surveys. And the Planning and Zoning Department sent out a mailer to every unincorporated parcel, letting them know that we were starting this process and how to become involved. That ended up being roughly 6,500 mailers. In addition, Olson reached out to outside agencies. That included the Clay County Health Department, fire districts, water districts, school districts, and then all of the local cities participated as well. They were part of that citizen stakeholder group, and they had private meetings with Olson to provide input as well. There were public open houses, 2 in-person public open houses and 2 virtual open houses. So all of that input that was received, and it's actually interesting when you look at the comprehensive plan, one of the appendices is the public engagement process, and it lists all of the public comments that were received. And as you read those public comments, and you get into the plan, you see how those comments guided what the plan is. So let's talk about the plan a little bit, just some major highlights. There's 8 sections and 4 appendices. Section 3 is the land use. Now that's something my department's going to use on a daily basis. I'm going to show you that map here in a second. Section 6 is the environment section. The reason I bring that up is there was a common theme throughout all of that public engagement of we love Clay County's agricultural character. We want to save some of the farmland. We want to protect the wildlife. We want to save the trees. We want to protect the floodplain. So that section guides us there, and you'll also see that also bleeds over into the land use plan when we get to that. And then section 8 is the implementation and action plan. So this is important because this gives us our strategies and goals of how we implement this plan. So you would think, right, we're getting ready to adopt this, that the hard work's over. Unfortunately, this is where my department takes all of these strategies and goals and tries to achieve as many of those strategies and goals as possible. And that's going to include working with multiple county departments and multiple outside agencies. And then there's 4 appendices. I talked about the public engagement summary, and then the economic and market analysis that was presented to the county commission at one of the previous meetings by Olson. So again, I'm hitting the highlights. This actually isn't the complete document, but I printed maybe 2/3 of it. There's 300 pages in there, so just know that there's a lot more in there than what we're going over tonight. So here is the land use map. Now, there's a lot going on there. So I'm going to try to draw to help a little bit. So any area that's in gray, that's city limits. This plan does not regulate there. So the first area we're going to talk about is this brown area. that is right outside city limits. That is called the managed growth area. That is, in most cases, a half-mile buffer around the cities. The thought there is, even though it's unincorporated, we want to collaborate with the cities and allow them to make choices in that area, so we're not doing development that would inhibit them from annexing those areas in the future. So it doesn't give a certain land acreage requirement for subdividing because it could differ by the cities. The next area, which is this gold area, is a residential area that calls for 3-acre lots. Then we go to the tan area. It's kind of spread in a few areas. That is a residential area that's a 5-acre lot. And we go farther to the light green areas, which is around Smithfield Lake and kind of the northeast section of the county. Those are slated to be agricultural, which would be 20-plus acre lots. So again, that kind of goes with all those public comments about preserving the prime farmland, protecting our natural resources, which obviously Smithfield Lake is one of our major assets. And then to go even further, these dark green areas are 40-acre areas. So the thought is we're going from the dense development inside city limits to a managed growth area where the city is basically going to guide us of what we should do there, to 3-acre, 5-acre estate lots, and then as you get farther out to the large agricultural zone lots. Now, in addition, you can see there are some blue areas. These are open space natural preserve areas. And the reason those were picked, those are around some of the parks, not including Smithfield Lake, and that also contains the floodplain for Clay County. So that is a very sensitive area. It basically is a overlay to protect that area because it's sensitive. And then we, again, with unincorporated Clay, we have, it's mainly 98% residential. We have very limited commercial and industrial, but you will notice along the major highways, there are a few spots, mainly along 92, 35, 69 highway, that call for commercial and or industrial. Now, that's going to be limited. The plan also talks about any kind of commercial or industrial development should either occur at a major intersection or it should be pushed out by the city, should start at city limits and then be pushed out. So I don't expect a large amount of commercial development initially to start, but it has been set aside that way for the future. So how are we going to use the plan? Really, this plan becomes a vision of the future of the development of Clay County, of how we see it developing over the next 20 years. It is designed to be a decision-making tool for elected officials and county staff. Like I said, my staff would use this on a daily basis when people talk to us about land use. It also puts in place a clear plan for citizens, developers, property owners to know if I'm buying property or I live in this area, this is the type of development I should expect in the future. And then it's going to help the county achieve some of its goals by having those strategies and goals in that implementation section. So let's talk about next steps. So obviously we're at County Commission today. My hope is that you would support the plan and recommend to the Planning and Zoning Commission to adopt this. This is one of those unique cases that the County Commission is an advisory board to the Planning and Zoning Commission. So my request is that you recommend the Planning and Zoning Commission to adopt the plan. If that's the case, our plan would be to take that to the December 3rd Planning and Zoning Commission to present to them and have discussion and finally to have them adopt it. The public education is going to be continuous. Some of those goals include us holding public meetings and educating the public, developers, county staff, Planning and Zoning Commission, County Commission about the new plan. And then we also have the Land Development Code. So the comp plan is kind of a guide for that development, but the Land Development Code has our day in and day out rules and regulations. So those two documents need to correlate and work well together. Obviously, with us adopting a new comprehensive plan, they're not going to correlate at this point. So we have begun the process of revising that document as well. That's going to be handled by staff internally. And I hate to even put this out here, it gives me stress just thinking about it right now, but we're planning on hopefully having at least a portion of that done next year, if not all of it, because those two documents need to align. And then my staff will work with the various county departments and those outside agencies to try to achieve as many of those goals as possible that are listed in the plan. This is my last slide. I just wanted to list all of those touch points we had during this process. Now, mainly this was Olson doing those, but it included going out to public events. You can see they attended Liberty Fall Festival last year and this year to get as much public comment as possible. But these are all of those with some of the pictures in behind from those events. So that is, I'm sure everybody behind me thought that was really long, but that was a really brief summary of the comprehensive plan, and I would be happy to answer any questions that you had.
Commissioner Lawson, are you seeking recognition?
Yeah. First of all, thank you for all your hard work on this. I know you really dedicated some time. And I think we have to stop and think for a minute, from Diana on down to everybody else. A lot of time was put in, and probably expense, to get this all taken care of. So I hope going forward, when we have people that want to say, well, yeah, but that doesn't apply to me and I want to do it something this way, that we look at this comprehensive plan and all the blood, sweat, and tears that went into it, and we uphold the standards that you've set, because, boy, I think that they look fantastic. I think it's a great plan. It's fair to everybody, and it does give people that opportunity to kind of keep the county out further, rural, the way that they want it. That's why they moved here, was for that out in the country kind of feeling. If you're in town, and then you choose to live there, that's great. But I don't hope that I never see the day that we have, houses with 1 acre lots scattered all over the county and take away that rural feeling that we have. So thanks a million for everything that you and everyone else have done, and I plan on fighting tooth and toenail to adhere to this plan for the future.
I appreciate that. I have a really good staff, and there were many county departments that were part of this, and then obviously Olson Studio did a great job of getting this plan together. And I do want to add that, yeah, there's going to be some growing pains, because the 20 acre and the 40 acre areas, that's different than the current plan. And so there are going to be some growing pains with this, and like I said, we can amend it if needed, but this gives very specific areas for development and then sets aside areas that should not be developed.
Commissioner Wagner.
Thank you. I want to echo my colleague's statement about you and your team. This is a lot of work, and I'm sure you are relieved to at least get to this point, knowing there's still more to do. But it is a lot of work, and I want to thank you for it. My question is somewhat driven a little bit by her comment. Just so I understand the processes, the potential where changes may come. So we will make a recommendation to the Planning and Zoning Committee. They will adopt it, which basically means they are the keeper of all of that. So if someone were to come forward, and actually I'll use the example of 92 Highway, because that's a pretty long commercial corridor that we have here, and someone may say in the middle of that, having something other than that may make more sense, whatever that may be. If someone wants to make a change like that, or even using your other example of a 20 and 40 acre, the 20 and 40 acre piece, what is that process? Is that solely the purview of the Planning and Zoning Committee? Do those sorts of changes ultimately come to us? How is the fidelity with the plan or changes to that plan done?
So if we get a proposed development that would not be consistent with the comprehensive plan, that case would go to both the Planning and Zoning Commission and County Commission. And you make a good point, because the comp plan is a guide. It's not hard and set rules. So there is no variance procedure. There will probably will be that situation where there's a project that makes sense that maybe goes somewhat against the plan, and the Planning, Zoning Commission and County Commission will have that discretion to make that choice.
Gotcha. And then at that point, if that sort of decision were to be made, that change, I assume, then is reflected in the plan, or how?
We would need to go through an amendment. If
Yeah.
it was drastic enough that we needed to change the plan, then we would go through an amendment process.
Understood. Okay. Well, I'm not looking to make one, just so we're clear, but I think it is good to understand how one keeps to the plan and what would cause it to change. And so thank you for the answers, and thanks for the hard work.
Thank you.
Commissioner Johnson.
Thank you. Yes, thank you, Kip. I appreciate, too, all the work that you and your staff have put into this. Couple of questions, very ignorant questions. And like Commissioner Lawson said, I'm one of those people that live in what we call the country, because I don't want to live in the city. I grew up in LA County, and I don't want to live in the city. If someone was to look at this map that you have here, or some that are in the notes as well, let's say they live in a place that's zoned agriculture right now, live on several acres. This doesn't change any of that for them, does it?
No, sir.
And just because it says residential 3 acres or managed growth or residential 5 acres, that doesn't require them to do anything different than they're doing now. Everything just stays the same.
That is correct. The only reason their zoning would change is if they came to us and wanted to subdivide or change property lines, then they would have to update to the current zoning.
And when it comes to annexation from the city, how does that work with someone who's in the county, someone who owns property in the county who does not want to be annexed by the city?
I am not part of that process, so I'm probably not the best person to answer that. They don't generally even notify my department that they're looking to annex. There's some, I believe there's some cities that do only voluntary annexations, but there are some that do forced.
Yeah, and this has nothing to do with annexation and future annexation and what can and cannot be annexed or anything like that?
Well, it does have a section where obviously we met with each city, and there is a map in the comp plan that shows where those future annexation areas are in their plan, but it does not push anybody to annex or change anybody that's unincorporated. That would be between them and the city.
I think that's already annexed property, isn't it? It's in the at least the documents I'm looking at here.
Part of section 3, I believe, is I think Smithville and if I remember right, Kearney identify some areas that they would like to annex in the future.
Okay, yeah.
But Excelsior and Liberty and Kansas City do not.
And that's all voluntary annex stuff that we're talking about. There's no forced annexation or anything like that.
Again, that's between the city and the property owner.
Yeah. Okay. Okay, thank you.
Not to belabor a point here, but you said something that set off a red flag. You talk.
That generally happens.
92 highway is so darn dangerous, it isn't even funny. I hope we don't see huge, well, maybe if we saw more growth out there, then you wouldn't have people driving like bats out of Hades. But the thing that I'm concerned about is, I don't care where it is, whether it's 92, 33, wherever. When we set this up and we say that in this area, 5-acre lots, nothing smaller, we start to make exceptions, then we've wasted our time, everybody's time and effort on this, because the next person that comes says, well, wait a minute, you gave John the right to do that. Why can't I have the right to do it? And then Fred comes in and he wants to do 3 acres. And before you know it, the whole damn plan is shot. So I think that once everything's adopted, I think we adhere to this plan, come hell or high water, and try to keep it as you've set it up and everybody's requested. This wasn't done in a closet. involved a lot of people and a lot of effort, so I think we really need to stick to it once that it's set.
Agreed, and you bring up a good point. Just because somebody presents a 3-acre or 5-acre development or even a commercial development on 92 Highway, this does not commit you to approving that development. We still have our rezoning criteria. So if somebody presents a 3-acre lot with new interior streets and the county can't maintain those extra streets, then you have a reason to deny that development. But if they present something that isn't consistent with the comprehensive plan, staff is going to recommend that you deny it. So it doesn't commit you to any of those development projects.
Further discussion? I believe we are looking for a recommendation to send it to the,
Commissioner Melton, you might
send
want
it to the, sorry?
I'm sorry, Commissioner, you might ask if there's anyone in the audience that would be interested in speaking on this.
That's a good
And then
point.
when you get to that point, there is a resolution, so you would need a motion to mark the box approval or denial.
Right.
To make a recommendation to the Planning and Zoning Commission.
Thank you for reminding me to ask for public comment. Is there anyone from the public who would wish to come forward and comment on this? Yes, sir. And please, anyone who would like to, as I'd said before, make sure the microphone is on, state your name, and then address the commission. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Jordan Babb. I'm a concerned Clay County landowner in regard to the land use portion of the Clay County Comprehensive Plan, Clay County Compass 2040 Resolution 2024-294. One of my largest concerns is the infringement of landowners' rights regarding the proposed plan. It largely dictates what a landowner can and can't do in regard to the selling of their land if they choose to do so. Clay County already has requirements in place protecting citizens. First being, for any parcel of land being subdivided, a public notice of rezoning is placed at the property, and landowners within 1,000 feet of that property are notified with a letter informing them of the subdivide. This allows an opportunity for the citizens of Clay County to approve or oppose of the subdivide at a specified Clay County Planning and Zoning meeting. This is still at the discretion of the Clay County Planning and Zoning Committee and commissioners to approve or deny the subdivide. Secondly, regarding the maintaining of infrastructure, Clay County has regulations in place. This includes an engineered hydraulic test. That study would then be done to perform if any other additional water meters needed to be set. That test indicates whether adding additional meters is going to affect neighboring water pressures. Also within Clay County, Clay County Road and Bridge and MoDOT also are informed for driveway permits. Permits have to be approved to ensure line of sight requirements are met to maintain safe ingress and egress for new rural homes. If the concern is preserving agriculture in all these smaller acreage parcels that are 20 acres or left, we have what's called ALP acres, which stands for Agricultural Land Preservation. So that's something that we already have in place for these smaller acre tracts to preserve agriculture is called ALP acres. And that is dependent on the size of the parcel needed to be issued as what's determining how many of those acres are considered ALP acres. In conclusion to this, if you revert back to page 13 of the resolution 2024-294, 1,400 community members were spoken to regarding this Clay County comprehensive plan. That should not warrant enough conclusive feedback to make this comprehensive plan viable. Those 1,400 community members only represent 0.5% of Clay County residents based on the 2022 census population. There are already adequate procedures in place and requirements in place to ensure Clay County preserves agricultural and maintains current infrastructure to protect Clay County residents. Therefore, the land use of the comprehensive 2040 plan is an unnecessary infringement of Clay County landowners' rights. Thank you.
Thank you. Before you leave, does anybody have any questions that they would like to ask the citizen? Commissioner Johnson.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate you coming up. And
Yeah.
So a couple questions for you. First of all, you just gave a number, that 1,400
Yeah, if
voices.
you go to page 13 on that comprehensive.
I'm looking at that right now. What did you say, what percentage is that of the?
I put as 0.5% based off the 2022
0.5. I
consent.
thought you said 25%.
No,
I'm thinking,
0.5.
no way.
0.5%.
Okay,
based
so
off
let me
the
ask you
2020.
this. Give me a scenario where this plan would come in conflict with something that you or someone else would want to
Okay,
do
so
with
for
your
example,
property?
I own a farm right north of Watkins Mill here, so on the northeast corner of that map there. Say, for example, I needed, to sell off a portion of my land to help pay for a medical bill or anything necessary like that. What this does is it restricts me from selling. I'd have to sell off a minimum of 20 acres or 40 acres. What also my concern is the current economy of the agricultural economy right now, commodities are the lowest that they've been since the 1960s and 70s, okay? So I work as a real estate agent. I sell land for landowners, okay? What I'm seeing is farmers are having to sell land to continue to fund their operations due to there's no profits for them currently. I mean, you said you were raised in agriculture, so you might be somewhat aware of that, but that's just my concern is it's limiting to what they can do. I think at the end of the day, I'm all for preserving agricultural land. I'm a farmer myself, so I'm an advocate for agricultural. But at the end of the day, to me, we should not be limited to what we can and can't do. We already have 5 acres in place, which I know has not always, followed suit. That's been the county requirement for 5-acre minimum. I know Joanne kind of touched on this. There's been a lot of instances where I've seen it not follow that suit. So at the end of the day, I think the 5-acre minimum should be kept. But at the same time, somebody should be allowed to sell their ground if necessary and not be limited to a minimum acreage requirement.
So is there any suggestions to this particular plan?
I would be curious on how we came up with these plans as far as the acreage requirement size of that.
Yeah.
I pull out another note here. If we went to the survey on the Compass plan here, it says, so this is the survey results here. It says 68% of the people surveyed were inside city limits and 8% of those people were in rural unincorporated America. So to me, I'm trying to voice my opinion for the rural people because I feel like a very minimum percentage of those people were reached out to regarding this. So that's just my concern is I more feel like it's more of a right to the landowner. They own the land. They should be able to sell acreage as they choose. I know the 5-acre minimum has already been set, but at the end of the day, that's my concern.
I don't disagree. And I've always had concerns, particularly when it comes to the country area. I'm always concerned about government and government overreach and government trying to control too many things. I come from a place, I lived outside of Irvine, California, where it's a completely planned community. I mean, planned out to a T. Don Bren, who I know, who basically was the owner there, he owns billions of acres of property. It's very, very specifically planned out, which is, some people like that. Other people, like me, maybe like you, we come to the country, we come to places where we don't want to be in the city and we don't want to be controlled by government and we want to have a little bit more freedom on what we do with our land, what we do with our property. And I'm always worried about stuff like this and about government overreach and that a few people think, hey, this might be a good plan for you guys with your property. Certainly you have to be, what's the word I'm looking for? Considerate of your neighbors and that kind of thing. But, and I don't know the solution, but I share your concerns. And again, I don't know the solution, but I do share those concerns, and I actually would like a little bit more time with this than to do anything with it because of those same concerns. And would like to hear from even more people in those areas. But yeah, I'm always leery of government making decisions for us. And this is one of those situations where, I'm concerned. It's just like you.
And I'll tell you as well, I mean, they said they sent out flyers. I never got these flyers. I literally found out about this Tuesday of this week. And that is my time to get my game plan together to present to you all my concerns for this. So at the end of the day, I mean, how do we verify that all these other rural places also received, we know the current, how do we verify that? At the end of the day, I think it's something that the people should vote on, and not, in my opinion, those people should have their
and
voice
I didn't get
heard.
one of those, unless my wife threw it away. I didn't see one either.
Yeah. So that was my biggest thing is I was literally just made aware of it, and then it's coming to a vote here to get to an understanding. I just feel like there just needs to be more methodically thought out about this, and also about the acreage size. We already have something in place. Why do we need to change that? We already have to verify a water meter. We can't build if we don't approve water meters to protect our current infrastructure for water and things like that. We have to do a hydraulic test to verify that it's not going to affect neighboring properties that are already existing. So we already have these procedures in place to manage this. So why does the acreage requirements even need to be in place?
Right.
I hope that makes sense.
Makes total sense, and I don't disagree. And I don't know the solution, but I don't disagree with that. But I see someone else wants to talk as well.
Commissioner Lawson.
Yeah. I don't disagree totally with Commissioner Johnson. I think that government can get too controlling, but we spent so much time on this, even as far, I don't know how many of us, I don't remember, I was there. We sat down with our Planning and Zoning Board. We went through all that scenario, talked to them. We have a great mix on that board, people who are hardcore farmers and people who are city dwellers and real estate agents and all kinds of people. I could see, and this is not a negative to you, but I can see how someone in the real estate game would look at this and say, whoa, this could cause me some problems down the road. I might want to develop my land. I had a gentleman come and talk to me the other day. He just bought 40 acres off of 92 Highway. Beautiful place, big barn, beautiful fencing, all that stuff. And he came in and we sat down and I realized who he was, where he lived. We chatted about the gentleman that owned it before, what a great piece of property it was, how beautiful it was. About 10 minutes into that conversation, he said, you know, I'm 60-some years old now. In a few years, I'm probably going to want to divide that land up. I thought, why the hell buy it in the first place? But nevertheless, that was his focus. He was in real estate, and that was kind of his plan down the road, to see what he could do to develop that piece of land into smaller plots of land. And if you're the guy that lives next door, I think about that, because there was a huge piece of acreage. I live on acreage. There was a big piece across the road that was for sale. All I could think about was, you know, there's going to be kids coming over into my land, messing with the animals, all that kind of thing. I could see a huge housing addition. Luckily, only one water allocated for that area. So they couldn't do more. One gentleman bought it. I was so thankful. But too often, you move out, you have your land, and then somebody starts developing next to you. You lose all of that you moved out for. What do? Pick up, move somewhere else? Usually at my age, you're not going to want to do that. But all I'm saying is that this wasn't done on a whim. And yes, maybe the number of people could have been more. But sitting up here, we do have a responsibility, a major responsibility. We talk to a lot of people. We decide what we feel after talking to those people and getting their feedback. We then make the decision. Now, it might not be a decision that you like, and I hate that, you know, you do see the holes in it, and of course there's going to be, but I feel as though that decision was made for the majority. I really do. We just did something a week or so ago where we talked about how we were going to handle donations to 501, what is it, 501? C3 Yeah. And where we were going to put our money. That's our responsibility. Where in the heck does our money go? You saw tonight where it went, a whole bunch of it. Tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of dollars goes to the court, goes to all kinds of sheriff, everybody. And, but we've got to make those decisions. They're not always wonderful decisions, but I'm going to tell you that I haven't been in this government game all that long, but this is one of the best documents I've seen, and unbelievable amount of planning, a bunch of meetings. We've exhausted, I don't even know how much money and time when you think about our staff, but I feel that this is a beginning point. Now, down the road, you see holes in it, maybe we'll have to make revisions in it. But for right now, I will back this to the teeth because I feel like it is, at this point in time, the best plan. And we're going to have folks like you that have a situation. You're right. That's a heck of a situation that could occur. You could have some kind of major health problem, and you've got a great asset there. You've got land. Everybody wants it, so that would be the best thing to do, is sell off a portion of it. And I think when the time comes, we'd always try to accommodate you in some manner. But I feel strongly that this is a great plan. I wouldn't change a thing on it. And I feel this is our responsibility to do what we've done, and we've done it the right way. That's just how I feel.
Can I ask why you feel like acreage requirements are needed on landowners to why they can and can't? Why does that even need to be necessary? If you guys at the end of the day have the say to approve or deny if a subdivide happens. Also, the people have a say as well when the letters are sent out to the surrounding landowners to oppose that, to help you guys make an informed decision on that. So at the end of the day, I feel like Clay County does not need any say on how many acres, with the 5 acre already being said. That's completely fine. But at the end of the day, you guys have made opposition to that in the past for a long time. So that's my biggest struggle with this, is why does this even need to be necessary? At the end of the day, the people need to be heard, and then at that time, the people who come up and oppose or approve of that, it is up to you guys to then make an informed decision to either pass that or deny it.
Well, I think you've got to have some kind of guideline on things like this. We've seen it all too often. If you don't have that set guideline of rules, any more than a school district or a city or anybody else has, you've got to have a plan and then try to live within that plan and make it the best you can make it. I think that we should be doing this. We shouldn't be doing this willy-nilly and saying, oh, well, that guy wants this, I'll do it. Oh, this guy wants something else, do it. You've got to have some kind of structure. So anyway, I think we're going to have to agree to disagree. I respect your opinion greatly, and you pay my salary. But I do feel that this is the way I feel it should be. And yeah, the majority of the people I've talked to have been happy about it, but,
Are they landowners?
Pardon?
Are they landowners?
Some of them are landowners. Yeah,
Okay.
You bet. I mean, that's all I know. They're going to have little, and not huge pieces of land. I'm not saying everybody I know has 100 acres, but it just, some of this is protection as far as I'm concerned. You live next to someone who has 80 acres. They want to develop it, and they want to develop it with 2-acre lots on this huge. First of all, you got to sit back and say, how the hell am I going to keep that road maintained? Who's going to take care of that road when all that traffic is on it? Well, it's us. And then you have to look at the guy that lives next door, and there's no sewer system, and the developer doesn't want to put in a self-contained sewer system. Then everybody's got their little potty ponds out there. And at the height of summer, and you're the poor fool that lives next door, what do you think that smells like? You have to think about all those things when you go to develop. If we don't have a set of rules, it could be chaos. People could be developing any way they darn well please, but there's got to be some kind of a mechanism to make sure that things that are done, the growth that is done in a controlled manner. And I mean, we could talk all day. You're never going to change my mind. I'm never going to change your mind. I just feel like too much went into this for it to just be a bad thing because, you see the hole in it. I don't. And, Commissioner Johnson may, but I don't think he'd want crazy growth next to him on his big piece of property either. So anyway, that's it.
Commissioner Wagner?
Thank you. And thank you for coming out this evening. I appreciate it. We don't see enough folks, and so the fact that you have come means something. It certainly means something to me. I tend to look at this as it's all in the eye of the beholder, right? You have a very specific reason why this may not work for you. And I get it, and I understand it. That's part of the reason why I asked earlier if one wanted to do something different or contrary to this plan, how would one go about it? Because if you don't have a recourse to do it, then that simply means, to your earlier point, that this is hard and fast and nothing will ever change with it. Now, notwithstanding my colleague's earlier comment about changing it, I'm just saying if there's not a recourse, that can be a problem. But we've talked about earlier how that can be. So if you and I say this not making any promise at all, but if you were to say, you know what, I have a situation where I need to be able to get 5 acres or whatever it happened to be to relieve whatever economic issue you were to experience, there is a way to do that. Planning documents simply tell the world, if you're coming to Clay County, these are the sorts of things that we are looking for as far as use of property. The value of that comes, I think, because if we wanted the Wild West when it came to property, well, then pretty soon you may have the situation where the person next to you is doing something that you don't like. And I understand your earlier comment about the zoning changes, and you're absolutely right. But if we are broadcasting that there are no rules, then pretty soon you're going to get a lot of no rule stuff. And for us, that doesn't work very well. I did want to address though some of your comments, and maybe that was why Kip was coming a little, he inched his way across a few seats. I noticed it.
I was going to call on you, Mr. Jones, once the commissioners were finished commenting, but so I assume you're, please
Yeah, and
proceed.
so he may give me a nod, or he can maybe address it a little bit later. But one of the comments that Mr. Jones made in his conversation, I think, speaks to some of the issues that you spoke of concerning things like sewers and water utilities, these sorts of things. Those, I believe, will come more in the document that he will work on next, if I'm not mistaken. So that those issues that you're speaking to are not necessarily, you're going to find in this document. This document will probably not speak to those. And so I just want to make sure that when we talk about issues and where they reside, and I understand you found out about this Tuesday, and so you're catching up a lot with this too, but I do want to acknowledge that issue and where I think that issue gets resolved. And I'll finally just say that, you know, I, as folks here know, I've been in this business a little bit in different circumstances, and you never catch everybody. You just never do. I would say that having over 1,000 people speak to it is actually pretty good for something like this, but I also recognize that because we don't go door to door and asking people, what do you think, we don't get everybody's opinion. And so I want to recognize that issue. And to that extent, if that is a reason for us to delay, I'll accept that, but I also want to recognize that, yeah, we did have 1,000 people speak to this, and the plan is necessary. But those issues that you've brought up are important. I think they get resolved another way. But even just the very fact of, hey, there may come a time when I want to split my property, or someone else may want to split their property, there is a route to do so. And my final comment will just simply be, this county has grown tremendously, as you know, tremendously. And people will move wherever they want to move, partially because of what they believe is going to happen there in the long term. This document forecasts out to 2040, right? So what is the message that we want to send to those who are interested in coming to this county? Now, based on some of the issues you brought up, there, you know, I get that too, that people want the ability to have the freedoms to do something on their property. But if we're talking about tens of thousands of people who will be moving here over the course of between today and 2040, having something like this, whether they're a developer or whether they're an individual that tells them this is where we think we're going for that time frame, I think is important so that they understand what they're getting into over the long term. And I don't know if anything makes it any better or whatever, but I do want to recognize the points you brought up, give at least some thought to that, or at least some issues that inform that. It certainly would say when Mr. Jones works on the next document, that Mr. Jones knocks on your door and talks to you about it, because certainly those issues you've raised are the sorts of in-the-weeds sorts of issues that are important if anyone wants to develop here in Clay County. So I appreciate your time and being here this evening. Thank you.
Mr. Jones, did you want to add anything to this part of the conversation?
Can I make a few
Yeah, go right ahead, please. And then
Yes.
I just want to make sure everybody got included, but please go ahead with
Yeah.
your comments.
So I just feel that Clay County already has a 5-acre minimum requirement already in place, okay? That is to keep rural areas already rural. That's a 5-acre minimum already. I don't see a need to extend that to 10, 20, 40-acre minimums when we already have that 5-acre in place, which there were many instances where we were not following those previously. So that is my concern as far as, hey, if we're gonna set something, I don't see the need to increase that acreage amount to these certain areas. And also what dictates, we have commercial property running all along 92 Highway. There's residents all along 92 Highway on the north and south side. When is that ever gonna be? I'm bringing this to your attention because I feel like it's a concern. I think that we should keep the 5-acre minimum requirement. I don't feel a need to go above that and exceed that. We already have a 5-acre minimum in place that has been working. Obviously, we have amended that, I guess, so to speak, on certain scenarios. So if we want to be stricter and hold firm to that, I am completely for that. But like I said, also, we also have other things in place for a 20 or 10 acre with ALP acres to preserve agriculture. That is why that was implemented, so they cannot build on those ALP acres to keep agricultural on those lots, okay? So I guess I'll give it away to Kip here, so.
Mr. Jones?
Kip Jones, Planning Director. So just a couple quick comments. So on the input discussion, yeah, I was dismayed at several points in this process because we tried to get people involved, and unfortunately sometimes people don't want to be involved. But I do want to articulate that this plan was put in front of thousands of people between all those events that Olson attended, whether they chose not to participate or not. And, you know, I can't guarantee that all those mailers were received by, you know, we hear the post office concerns, but the mailers did go out to the 6,500 unincorporated parcel. So I think we did a pretty good job of reaching out. The one thing that I always fall back to is around Smithville Lake. So this area here, that's been one of the biggest heartache problems in my 10 years, because we've done a lot of the 5-acre lots that Mr. Babb has talked about. And that area in the current plan is called the natural resources tier. And so we've approved multiple plats with multiple 5-acre lots. We're putting septic systems on those 5-acre lots around Smithville Lake. And I would recommend that you look at the comments, the public engagement section, because there are multiple comments. As planning and zoning, we don't get a whole lot of, hey, we like this. But there are multiple comments in that public engagement survey or in that section that I've talked to several folks in that area that love that they're going to 20 acres. So I just throw that out there just as a discussion point. Other than that, I'm just happy to answer any more questions that the members have.
Commissioner Johnson.
I want to follow up, maybe you can answer this directly, but based on what both Commissioner Lawson and Wagner said. So just to be clear, there are, even though I don't think Commissioner Lawson wants to, but there are exceptions to this where if someone does say, you know what, hey, I would like an exception to this plan, hence I want to sell, you know, how does that work?
Yeah, so I'm going to brag on my staff again, because we are, for planning and zoning departments, I think we are customer service oriented. I believe our job is to find a way for the citizen to do what they want to do. Now, there's always a process to go through. It may not be the easiest process to go through, but there will be a process for a citizen to stand in front of a board and request something that doesn't meet this plan. They will not come to our office, and we may say, hey, we're going to recommend denial, but we'll give them a path to follow to do what they want to do. Because if you look at areas up here, I mean, on one side of the street, it's a 20-acre area. On the other side, it's a 5-acre area.
Right.
Is there some leeway there? Yeah. There probably is.
Okay. Good, very good.
But
Good
that'll
answer.
be up to the Planning and Zoning Commission and County Commission. We're,
Sure.
as staff, as Commissioner Lawson said, I want to abide by this new plan. We put a lot of time, effort into this. We're going to be pretty strict, and that's why I say there's going to be growing pains, because we're going to make recommendations by the plan.
And back to what I was saying before, I guess, is my concern with the government overreach is I don't think one size fits all. And I think there's always going to be exceptions. No matter what rules we put in place, there's always going to be exceptions to the rule. And we just have to have a process in place for that exception, I think. And you're telling me that there's a process in place, and if it's a reasonable exception to the rule, that this commission or the planning and zoning could make that exception to any plan or any rule, just like the example that was given tonight.
Yes, if Mr. Babb comes to us, he's in a 20-acre area, he wants to do a 10-acre lot, there will be a process for him to go through.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Excuse me there. I've had some experience working with Mr. Jones on some of these issues, and I have seen in the past, over the years, where a citizen has come forward and wanted to perform a specific task or do something with their property that may not be exactly, fit the template. And I've not seen an instance where the department or Mr. Jones has not worked to accommodate and brought forward alternate plans for, here's how you can accomplish what you're trying to accomplish. So I think Mr. Jones is rightly proud of the work that they do over in planning and zoning. And I think that's, like I say, my experience is if a citizen is trying to accomplish a specific task, this department has been always accommodating and finding a path forward under the rules necessary, and if not, then of course, some kind of variance would be sought. But I think that that board has, that department has been very accommodating to citizens over the years that I've been exposed to it. Commissioner Wagner.
Thank you, and I don't mean to belabor, but since you are up here, Kip, would you mind explaining the roles of this plan versus the role of the next plan that you would work on in concert with this? Because I want to be sure that we are setting expectations correctly on what does what.
Yeah, so this current plan, comprehensive plan, is an overall guide for the development of the unincorporated sections of Clay County. Now, it includes much more things than that, but on a day in and day out basis, that's what we're dealing with. The land development code is our day in and day out rules and regulations. It sets how much road frontage per lot you have to have, what kind of infrastructure. Do you have to do curb and gutter with the development? It says, what size lot do you have to propose to have a septic system or a community sewer system? It has the animal regulations. So it's all of that stuff that when we get into the weeds and we talk about a specific development, it includes all those items like our sidewalks required. And it includes all of our zoning. So right now we don't have 3-acre zoning. Because as Mr. Babb said, the smallest lot for the current plan is a 5 acres. So we're going to have to adjust all of that to correlate or work with this comprehensive plan. Does that answer your question?
It does, thank you.
Is there anyone else from the public wishing to comment? Please come forward, state your name, and make sure that the green light is now on, and then proceed with your comments.
Yeah, my name is Michael Alexander. First of all, thank you. Sorry if I'm underdressed here. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. I've been a Clay County citizen for 11 years. I lived in KC Mo near Liberty and have been in Kearney area for about 7 years now. Have a few acres there. I grew up in rural Iowa, and we've had a dream for a while to buy some land, split it into a few lots, and have family live by each other is essentially what we've been trying to do. So we've been looking at land in Clay County for a couple years. We like it in Clay County. I could probably be here for an hour listing the reasons why. But I guess when I look at this plan, the thoughts that are going through my head is, I think the purpose of this is to preserve the rural feel of a lot of Clay County, especially the further out that you go from the city of Kansas City and honestly the little towns, Kearney, Smithville, et cetera. So the further out you go, you want to preserve that rural feel more. So the industrial corridors that have been talked about a few times here tonight, I feel like those are areas that are going to harm that country feel more than splitting a piece of land from 20 acres to 5, or 5 instead of 20. So to me, when we're looking at this, there's a few areas that, particularly if you look in the southeast, you go from the gold, the 3 acres, straight to 40. There's no real gradual outcropping from there. It just goes from 3 to 40. And most of the other areas in the map are, very gradual in that sense. So where I'm kind of going with this too is, if you, on any place on this map that's considered ag or the borderline with the TAN, the residential 5-acre areas, I guess the question I would pose, and I would challenge the thought of how much different is it going to feel when some of these areas are split into residential 5-acre lots versus 20. I don't think it makes that much of a difference. What does make a difference is if somebody is going with an industry or something that is loud in those areas, or if somebody is using it for a business purpose for something that, I don't know, I can't even think of one that makes a lot of noise or has lights shining, ruins the looking at the stars. To me, I kind of agree with what one of the other people said here today. I think if we've got this process for the 5-acre lot already, that seems to suffice to me to be able to still fulfill the intent of what is going on here without, really hindering a lot of people's rights for their land, and for people like us that have been looking to try to find a 20 to 30 acre parcel that we can split into a few lots and be a family and live near each other. We're fulfilling the feeling that we're trying we're fulfilling what the purpose of this is, and that is to have people live in the country in Clay County and really enjoy that life and still be near driving distance to Kansas City. So to me, I like the idea. I love it. There's a few areas on here I'd like to tweak a little, change colors. That's all I have.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions of the citizen? Okay. Is there anyone else wishing to come forward and speak on this plan?
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Seeing none. Are there any commissioners who would like to make any more comments before I seek a motion? Seeing none. So is there a motion that would like to be made on this issue? Okay. Commissioner Wagner.
Thank you. Move to approve 2024-294 with box marked approval.
Motion has been made for the approval of 2024-294 with the box mark approved. Discussion, Commissioner Johnson.
Yeah. So I know you already asked this, I think, Commissioner Wagner, but the process that this goes through from here, what happens if this is approved by us tonight? Then what?
Excuse me, Mr. Jones.
I'm sorry, so what's the question?
So if we approve this tonight, this resolution, what happens next?
It'll go to a public hearing at the Planning and Zoning Commission December, that date was up there, 3rd,
December
5th?
3rd, yeah.
3rd.
And Planning and Zoning, they have to approve this.
They would need to adopt it, yes, approve it.
And Is it true that it's actually their approval that's the official approval of this?
Yes, sir.
So we can approve or disapprove, doesn't matter, it's what they say that really
You are
matters.
making a recommendation, so when I present the case to them, I will say the county commission voted, however, to recommend approval or denial to them.
Okay.
Kind of opposite of what generally happens.
Okay, and I want to make sure everyone else knows that the approval here tonight just means that it goes to planning and zoning. They're going to have hearings and make the official approval.
Thank you for the clarification, because there's a variation from what would be the usual process. Any further comments? Seeing none, you're recognized to close.
I close.
Please call the roll.
Commissioner Wagner.
Aye.
Commissioner Withington. Commissioner Lawson.
Yes.
Commissioner Johnson.
Although I have some concerns, I am going to vote yes to let it go to planning and zoning for their hearings.
Commissioner Thompson.
Yes.
Commissioner Carpenter.
Yes.
Motion passes 6-0.
Thank you. That concludes the regular agenda. That brings us to discussion items. We have one item up for discussion. Administrator?
Actually, I would defer to Commissioner Wagner for an introduction on this particular topic.
Commissioner, if you would like to activate your microphone, I will recognize you to speak. Please proceed.
Thank you very much. It has been no secret for this body that I have been very interested in the county moving forward with some version of fiscal policies for a number of reasons, whether that is for enhancing what we may get or what sort of rating that we may get from bonding agencies at some point, should we do bonding, or rather putting guide rails on some of the things that we do, whether it is the use of one-time revenue, how we may be able to accelerate projects by using interfund borrowing, and so on and so forth. I have, from time to time over the last over a year and a half, warned that this day was coming. And it has arrived when we can talk about this, but it is not done in a vacuum. And so I want to recognize the help of Commissioners Johnson and Thompson. I want to recognize the help of our county auditor, Mr. Hurlbert, who has looked through these, as well as our bond counsel and bonding agency, who have given their insight into this as well. And last but certainly not least is the county administrator, who, when I asked, let's work on something and give me something to look at, and 37 pages later she did so, and all with very good stuff that has been the crux of the conversation that we have had for the last 2 to 3 months and is brought before you today. I might just mention before the county administrator gives you the full explanation that what we've tried to do is not only look at policies that we did not have, but also policies that we did, and policies that come from state statute as well that we really followed, but they just weren't printed anywhere. And so although what you might see looks rather daunting, it comes from a variety of different places. It's had a variety of eyes to look at it, and so I feel very confident in what we brought for discussion for today. And with that, I will turn it over to the county administrator. Thank you.
All right, thank you. So as Commissioner Wagner said, this is sort of a culmination of a lot of work that has happened over the last couple of months by a number of individuals. And so, as he mentioned, our 3 commissioners, the auditor, myself, our financial advisor, Columbia Capital, and also our bond counsel, Gilmore and Bell, we're part of this process, taking a draft and having a couple of meetings, going through 37 pages to simply talk about these financial policies. And the objective really was to align these policies with your financially sustainable focus area out of your strategic plan. And so there are 4 bullet points there that are really key. It's been about having fiscal stability for the county, to protect and preserve our assets, and to reduce any risk and uncertainty, and while we still have flexibility, right? And we'll talk a little bit more about different policies and how to accomplish that. And then I think the other key aspect is it's about transparency. It's about transparency to our citizens about what are our policies, our financial policies, our budgeting policies. And so those were basically the guidelines and the objectives that we did in putting them together. So before you in the packet is 37 pages of financial policies and budget policies. And so what you have listed here, which I tried to capture in your staff report, is there are 12 policies included, individual policies included in this draft. Now, of those, 4 of them are existing policies and ordinances, things that the county has actually put to paper and been operating under. And so you see those listed in this chart, and also identified that there were no changes, except for one of the policies, cash management and investment policy, and all we did was some minor updating on that particular policy. There are 8 new policies, so to speak. That's why I categorized them but however, as Commissioner Wagner said, many of these policies have been practices of the county because we're governed by state statute to have to do that, or we have IRS regulations that we have to do when it comes to reporting on bond and debt. It's also, we follow our Constitution, and there are aspects in the Constitution that talks about the issuance of debt, and certainly then state statute. And then some is just our regular practices that we've done, and we've tried to put those things down in paper, again, for that transparency piece to everyone on how we actually function. So with that, what I'd like to do is not bore everybody to death, but hit the quote-unquote new policies and talk about those key components. Now, many of the policies, as I said, are by state statute or by the Constitution, and so they are what they are. However, there are some in many of the policies that are really policy decisions for the Commission to establish, and so I want to highlight those because certainly we want to get the Commission feedback if there's any desire to modify those. So the first policy I'm going to talk about is the capital improvement policy, and so this really actually aligns with our Constitution, because in the Constitution it says that as part of the budget process, the budget officer will present to the Commission the capital improvement plan. And we've actually extended that to not just a 1-year plan, but a 5-year plan. And so we did that last year for the very first time, and we're going to continue to build on that as part of the annual budget process. It also says in the policy that when we do capital improvement plans and bring that to you, it includes what's the estimated cost for that project, which of course it's tied to budget, so that's an important piece, and also identifying potential funding, what that means. Is it coming out of cash, or is it something that may need a debt project? And then also, sometimes our capital projects may have ongoing costs. And so again, for full transparency and making sure that the Commission has all the information that you need to make decisions, then that's a key component of a requirement as we bring to you the capital improvement plan. So I don't know if the desire is you want me to stop after every policy and kind of take questions, or if you want me to go through all of them and go from there.
Let's just take a pause that way in case there's a question. We can get it while the details are fresh and on top of mind. Commissioner Lawson.
I just want to say that I really did take time and look this thing over at home. I sincerely did. I looked at it in great depth, and I am extremely impressed. In the verbiage, I see this man here with the wording, love it, our little wordsmith. But I know that all of you that worked on this worked darn hard to get it the way it is. I have, for the first time in my life, I have no concerns about it. I think it looks outstanding, and I think it's time that we had a document like this. So I congratulate all of you on this, and I was impressed, highly impressed.
Any other comments before we move on? Commissioner Johnson.
Yeah, I'll just give a general comment. First, I want to thank Commissioner Wagner, as well as our administrator, for all the work they did, the heavy lifting on this, and then also for our auditor for his expertise on this as well. But I'll say, and I've been saying this for a couple years now, the county is going through what I call a rebranding phase, starting with our new constitution and with this new commission. But the county is really rebranding as a we're no longer a podunk county. We're big boy now. We're putting on our big boy pants, and things are changing. And this is one of those key components to doing that. Having a financial policy like this is critical, and that's part of being a big boy county, or big girl county, whatever you want to say. But this is part of growing up and really moving from the podunk backroom deals kind of stuff to, hey, now we're with the running with the elites. And so I think this is great. I think it's critical. I think it's a good thing, and having been able to sit in through the meetings with it and review it as it went along, I'm real happy with it, and I really appreciate the work that's going into it. And I think this is a good thing for the county. So thank you.
Anything further? Commissioner Wagner.
There's a term that says, don't sell past the sale that's coming to mind, but I do want to point out, I appreciate everything's been said, but there's more, there's so much more, and so so just hold that thought and don't change your mind, and I'll let but I guess since we don't want to sell past the sale.
Got it.
You got it.
So I will hit the key points and answer any questions. So the next policy is the debt management policy. And I think it's important to know this one. Many of the aspects in this particular policy are governed by state statute on how much debt the county can go into and what kind of debt we can issue. And so again, it's just kind of bringing all that forward along with bringing into it information from our Constitution that talks about issuing debt. So I do want to kind of talk about just some of the key points. And there are different types of debt that the county could issue, GO bonds, and the policy does stipulate, and again, these are guidelines, just as your previous conversation had said, right? These are policies that are set by the commission. So should a project arise or something occur that, we would issue GO bonds, but because financially or a special obligation bond, or even especially when we get into the IRB bonds that have a maximum of 10 years in the policy, that's a policy set by the commission. And so if it makes financial feasibility and the best interest of the county that you want to do it a little bit longer than that, and it's allowed by state statute, you can certainly do that. But this is sort of the parameters in which we will work as staff to bring you ideas should we have to issue debt for any particular project. It does also talk about interfund borrowing, which Commissioner Wagner mentioned. And so it's something that we can do. Historically, the county has not done this, but we've talked about that in some instances, like in our use tax fund, which comes in by sales tax. So we have projects that we budget and want to get started at the beginning of the year because sales tax come in monthly through the year. We may not have the cash, and so we delay actually operating and starting those projects. So this policy allows for interfund borrowing on a short-term basis or even a long-term basis, but that's still a county commissioner decision on what to do, and it really just helps with cash flow is what that does. The policy also talks about the issuance process, right? And then again, we added that stipulation about the county constitution says that it takes a supermajority of the commission if we're going to the voters to issue debt or obligation if the amount exceeds 15% of the prior year's revenue. That is called out in the Constitution, and so we put it in the policy. Talks about the types of sales that we could do. So you could do a competitive bond sale, you could do a negotiated sale, or you could do a private placement, and all of those are allowed under the state statute. Talks about the disclosure requirements and having a credit rating. Credit ratings are very important because the better our credit rating is, the less interest that we pay, and that saves our taxpayers money. And then it talks about the administration of the portfolio, basically the bond proceeds, that we're allowed to invest those per our investment policy, which means we would get some income from that as we're paying out for whatever project we borrowed money for. But we also have to meet the IRS obligation and requirements for tax compliance, and certainly have to be concerned about arbitrage. So I'll stop on that particular policy in case anybody has any questions about the debt management policy.
Seeing none,
Okay.
go ahead.
The next one is financial accounting and reporting. These are things that we do. Our auditor's office does a great job with this, but again, we felt like we needed to put it down in paper. First of all, our financial statements are according to the generally accepted accounting principles, basically called GAAP accounting. We also do an annual comprehensive financial report. We also annually submit that to GFOA, which is the Government Finance Officers Association. It gives us a third-party look at our annual financial report to get input input from that. We also applied for the award on that and have been successful the last year or so. And then also we say, which we do, is we hire an outside independent auditor to come in and audit our financials on an annual basis. And that happened just recently, and the auditor was here and presented those findings. So again, this is not new. This is the county practice and policy. We just decide to solidify it, put it in a policy, and make it aware for our citizens. So again, any questions on this policy?
They seem to be
Okay.
none.
So the next policy is on fixed assets, infrastructure, and capital asset policy. So that we're doing this, but again, putting it down in paper. We inventory assets. Assets have a tag for anything that has an acquisition cost of $1,000 or greater. Now, we had some discussion on this because it doesn't take much to spend $1,000, but that is by state statute for counties, and so we follow the state statute. We also track and capitalize computer equipment if an acquisition of $500 or greater. There is an annual physical inventory that is conducted by the auditor's office, and we also, as is our practice, and you know we've come before you, we're the county commission, you authorize the disposal of county property. We come to you and talk about that so that we can sell it, and in some cases we've given it away to other jurisdictions. And then in the policy we have formalized in a table what is the depreciation schedule for specific capital assets.
I see no questions.
Okay. The next one is our fund balance reserve policy and emergency appropriations policy. So this is an important one. This basically helps us, why do we have reserves? And so the policy talks about that, right? It's good financial planning, it's financial strength and flexibility, certainly helps us avoid cash flow interruptions. As you all know, and have heard me say this during the budget process, the significant revenue for the county on an annual basis is sales tax. And so economic conditions can impact us. And so we need that reserve to help us in any kind of fluctuation that may occur. It also allows us with a reserve or fund balance to generate interest income. It reduces any kind of need for short-term borrowing because as we said earlier, we can do it from ourselves in interfund borrowing. And it helps us also with whatever our bond rating is, because the bond rating agencies will look at our financial stability and also what do we have in reserves. Now, this policy, which this is something that we want to make sure that the commission is comfortable with, is this policy sets minimum targets and a target and then a preferred, right? So 3 different kind of categories. So for the general fund, this policy says that the minimum reserve is 15% of general fund and the law enforcement sales tax revenues, because law enforcement fund does not keep a reserve, of 15%. That's the minimum. We have a target of 20%, because it's always good to have a goal. And then we have a goal out there kind of looking forward in 2030 to have a 30%. That helps us increase our bond rating. And we know eventually down the road, we have some large projects that we will need to be considering. What are we doing about the expansion of the courthouse? What are we doing about the expansion of the detention facility? So I said, but on our horizon, there is going to be some kind of debt that the county will have to do to compensate for those projects. The better financial position we're in with regard to reserves, again, better credit rating, lower interest on the money that we might have to borrow. And then that's the general fund. And then we have other significant operating funds where we've set a minimum of 10% and a target of 15%. And in the policy, we actually outline what are those significant operating funds, like the park fund, like the capital use tax for general, or the capital use tax for road and bridge or for parks. And so they have a little bit of a different target. And so with that, I will stop to see if there are any questions. Now, I have a little bit more on this particular policy because it does talk about when is it appropriate to use budgeted reserves. So when do we find ourselves in that condition? Well, first of all, it's sort of a temporary resource in case an economic downturn, right? So things kind of fluctuate, and so it helps us have a stable operation. It helps us meet emergency expenditures or unplanned expenditures. And also we recommend that, if you're going to do it, it's for one-time capital outlay. You don't want to use your reserves for ongoing costs. But the policy also says that if the imbalance, right? We've got an imbalance and we have to get into reserves, and they're expected to continue, right? long-term recession, sales taxes not coming in, and it's forecasted not to for a number of years, then the policy stipulates staff will come forward to the commission with basically a financial plan. How do we close the gap? Are we increasing revenues some way, or again, decreasing expenditure, or a combination of both? But you cannot live while, continuing to dig into your savings account, which is what our reserve is, on an ongoing basis. So with that, I think that's the last on that particular policy. I'd stop in case anybody has any questions.
Questions or comments? Commissioner Carpenter?
Thank you. Thank you so much. So just to better understand the minimum triggers coming up with a financial plan if you were to dip below the minimum. Is that right?
Especially if we look like we're going to have to dip below the minimum on an ongoing basis.
Right, for at least a year.
Right.
So when we use the term minimum, it's not a hard minimum. It's okay.
Yeah, and perfectly clear. I will tell you right now, we're working on the 2025 budget, the general fund, as we budget and forecast. Again, revenues hit what they say, we spend every dollar. We will not hit the minimum in the general fund at 15% on paper for the budget.
I see.
And we've talked about that, and we've said, look, it's going to take us a while to get, so while I say this is a minimum, it's also our targeted minimum, because it is a different way of the county's approach, and so we're not going to get there overnight. And so to your point, there's some flexibility there, but it's a guide especially for staff as we're putting budgets together and we're coming forward. We've been fortunate the last couple of years that we've actually added to fund balance, right? Revenues came in higher than budgeted. Now we've worked at this next year to really kind of hone in because things have stabilized. We have more of a trend analysis after COVID. But it is one of those things that we've added to fund balance, but we're certainly not at 15%. So I don't want to mislead you, but I think these are things that we're trying to aspire towards.
Good. Thank you.
Commissioner Wagner?
Thank you. Well, actually, the administrator just took the word right out of my mouth. This is one of those aspirational pieces, right? So it's really about where do we want to go and memorialize it in some fashion so that it does send the signal that this is where we'd like to be. How can we get to where we want to be? And so my expectation, so it's really clear, is that I don't expect this budget that's coming to like nicely fall in line with all of these things. But if as a group, this is our aspiration, that's good enough for me. So.
Commissioner Carpenter?
Thanks. Well, and I just want to say, along those lines, I think it makes a tremendous amount of sense to be setting those kinds of goals. And revenues are coming in strong right now. We're blessed by that fact to be able to do a lot of important projects. We had some folks talk about roads and bridge. We got a new director, which is wonderful. And so we've got some ongoing catching up to do on some things. But we ought to be aware that it's not a permanent reality that revenues are going to be strong like they are now. And so to the extent that we as a body want to really aim for not only the minimum but the target and the aspirational 2030 target, I think it is the correct goal to pursue. And that at the end of the day means, to Commissioner Lawson's point, spending money wisely, and that's half of the equation. The other half is protecting our revenue sources. If we do those two things, we can put some money into savings, and I think that would be wise. So, thanks.
I think it's really great. One of the words that keeps being brought up is aspirational. It's a word we haven't had in this county for some time, and I think that congratulations to all involved in this, because it is good to see us in a position now to where we feel we can actually be setting goals and setting long-term visions of where we need to be as a county. So I'm very impressed by the quality of work that's been done here. Thank you all who are involved.
And I would say from staff's perspective, as we go through the budget process every year, this will be a component of it, right? We will tell you, how is the budget ending and where are we forecasting we think we'll be, and are we hitting our minimum, are we not? So we will always tie back to this. Okay, the next policy is the grant policy. This is new, and there's a little bit of change from an operational standpoint. So what happens is, we encourage everyone, all department office holders, to seek outside funding. And many times, which is great, they're successful. And many times, those grants have a local match that is required. And sometimes when we're successful and get a grant and then we find out what the match requirement is, then we're all kind of scrambling to figure out how and where are we funding our local match. So this policy does create a little bit of a change. So what we say here is, if you're applying for a grant and there is a local match, and the local match, if you're successful, is $12,000 or greater, we are going to ask our departments and our office holders to come to the commission prior to applying for the grant so that you all are aware of what the obligation is if we're successful and get the grant, because now we're pledging resources for our local match. So that's a little bit different. We also put in there really some housekeeping things about external parties that, perform grant work on our behalf, that they have to adhere to county, state, and federal laws. And certainly in here, if we have subrecipients that receive a $750,000 grant from the county, that putting everyone on notice, they will be required, and these are, gap requirements, all of that. And depending on the funding source for the grant, they have to do a single audit, especially if it's federal funding. And what we're doing is putting those subrecipients on notice that they will be required to have a single audit done on those revenues and grant they receive from the county. So I'm going to pause there if there are any questions about, because this is a little bit different in a policy that we'll be asking of our departments and office holders that we've not asked for in the past. They've typically gone out, which is great, found some grants and applied for them. As far as I know, I don't know of us ever turning down a grant that we receive, no matter what the match has been. We've kind of found it. But there could come a time where the match could be substantial and we'd have to possibly deny receiving the grant. And once you do that, that kind of shoots ourselves in the foot for future grants from that particular source. So we'd rather have all that information up front, have the commission approve that grant process and application, and then we keep our fingers crossed that we're successful. So I just want to pause there if anyone has any questions about that. Seeing none, then I'm going to go to the next one, which is an internal service fund policy. So we started having an internal service fund, actually, with this year's budget when we created the countywide GIS department. So we have the GIS department and their budget, and then for those departments that utilize GIS, they actually are charged a percentage of the budget for GIS. That's how we fund GIS. So that comes from the assessor's office, from the recorder's office, from Road and Bridge, from the general fund, and so all of those are charged to cover the budget for GIS. So that's existing now. So we wanted to solidify that in a policy. A future internal service fund, just for your thoughts, has to do with basically fleet maintenance. Right now we have fleet maintenance and they do the road and bridge primarily. They do some with maybe on parks, but we've talked to the sheriff. He's interested in possibly having our own fleet maintenance do minor repairs and oil changes and things like that. The assessor has now got vehicles. So we may then be thinking about having fleet maintenance as an internal service fund. And if that's the case, we would be charging each one of those departments for their cost to fund the operations of a fleet department. So just thinking about that. And so since we have an existing one, we just created a policy on how that actually works.
Seem to be no questions.
Revenue policy. So again, this is things that we do from an operational standpoint. We examine revenue trends, especially our sales tax and use tax, on a monthly basis. We do analytics on forecasting and what that means, also taking into consideration economic conditions, and we use that in the annual revenue forecast, especially when it comes to budgeting. We did put a statement in here that for any revenue sources where there is a legal action pending, the county will not use those funds. We kind of do that now because when someone pays their property tax under protest, it stays with the collector. Now, agencies can apply to get those protested funds where they can use them, and we've seen school districts apply for protested funds, even though the final disposition of the outcome has not been determined. The school district's hoping that they're on the right side. If they're on the wrong side, and the property owner would win, then the school district, we'd have to get those monies back. So here, that's an example where we don't do that as a county, and so we decided to put that in the policy, that if there are revenue sources that are really available to the county, but there's legal action pending, then we don't use those funds. They're set aside until there is an outcome determined, because if we'd be on the wrong side, we'd end up having to pay it back. The other thing talks about user and rate fees along with target cost recovery as a percentage. It's part of our budget process. You just did that tonight when you approved fees for the 2025 and forecasting out for the next 4 years. So again, it's part of our annual budget process, but we put that in this particular policy. And that would be all of the new policies, and I'm happy to answer any questions, get some direction from the commission on where you'd like to go from here on the policies.
Everybody seems to be fairly satisfied. No one has sought recognition or comment? Commissioner Wagner, you just could not resist.
Well, silence is golden, so that tells me. First, I just want to appreciate everyone's kind comments and their questions. I appreciate everyone that's been a part of this discussion to get us here to date. I am hopeful, based on what I've heard, or what I've not heard, that we are prepared to move forward next week. And I throw it out to this body to give that direction to the county administrator. But thank you all, again, very much.
If there are no other comments, then we need to seek the consensus of the commission to send it forward. Am I seeing head nods all the way around? I do indeed. So do you need anything in addition to that, or does that give you the direction that you require?
That gives us a direction, and with the commission, we'll have it on next week's consent agenda, adopting it as an entirety, and we will put this out on the website and under finance and budget so that it's available to the public once it's adopted. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, so that just concludes discussion items. County administrator comments.
Just a couple items. The first item is I'd like to introduce our new Road and Bridge Director. We've referenced him this evening, but certainly want to introduce Tom Dagenhart to the commission, although I know he met most of you before the meeting, but we want to introduce him to the public. We're thrilled to have him on board. He's in his 4th day with the county, and so, we know he can find the bathroom and where the buildings are, and he's been meeting with staff, and we're thrilled to have him here. So I don't know if you want him to come to the podium, so.
We want a speech. I have not prepared a speech. Good evening. It's an honor to be here, to be serving as your Road and Bridge Director. I look forward to serving this commission and the citizens of Clay County. I bring 30-plus years experience in the municipal sector, covering all aspects of public works, so to come kind of focus here on Road and Bridge, which is really my passion. So that's why I decided to come here, and I'm excited to be here.
Thank you much. Congratulations, and certainly welcome to our county.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
Any other comments from the commission? Commissioner Wagner?
Thank you. I've known Tom for a lot of years. It's been a while since we've been in the same grouping, but I just wanted to warn you, your honeymoon's over tomorrow. Everything's your fault starting Monday. But Tom, I'm glad you're here. Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
Commissioner Johnson.
Yeah, I too just want to say congratulations and welcome aboard. If you don't know, every single one of us ran on the idea of improving our roads and bridges. So if we don't get reelected, we're blaming it on you.
Good enough.
See no other comments.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
And my last item is the commission's next meeting will be next Thursday, the 24th at 6 o'clock here in the chambers.
Very good. That brings us to commissioner comments. Commissioner Carpenter, do you have anything you'd like to share?
No comments, thank you.
Commissioner Thompson?
No comments, thank you.
No? Commissioner Wagner? No. Well, I am not about to break this pattern because it's getting a little late, so I have no comments either. That being the case, we are adjourned. Thank you.
Is that okay?
Yeah.